seeing all the comments on the video that I posted yesterday was like unreal. I knew that people related. I didn't know how many people related so intimately to the feelings that I was having. And I guess moving forward, I wanted to just share things that I have found to be very valuable to me over the last couple of years, and things that have helped me shift my mindset and things that have made me feel comforted. But I do think we need to be like fed creatively. And if you're not putting in and you're just taking out, eventually there'll be nothing left. And one thing that has made me happier over the last year is not reaching for my phone and social media being my main form of entertainment. And like, yes, I'm still on. I haven't like deleted the apps or anything. I did over the last 3 to 5 years or so. I've gone through deleting them, re-downloading them, deleting them, putting time limits, all this stuff. And like, I didn't realize so much of what I have to tell you is like, you will come to a place where your bad habits go away because you are nourishing your being in general and taking care of yourself. Like, not everything has to be muscling through and like forcing yourself to go on a social media break. And I was thinking about this in the car a lot this morning, and there's like this saying, like carrot or the stick. It's like how you can motivate someone to do something, and either you can offer them a carrot or you're gonna whack them in the ass to get them to work. And I think that you have to identify in yourself what kind of personality you have. Because if you don't have a good idea of that, you may go about motivating yourself in entirely the wrong way. I can't imagine being someone who is motivated by really, really tough love, but I assume that there are people like that who exist. Once I worked out that I don't, like, I just need to be like praised and coddled and like, yeah, and then I do my best work. But the praising and the coddling and everything, I'm learning to do that entirely myself, in addition to regularly taking care of yourself. I've found that consuming more art, whether that it can be in any form, really helps feed your creative being. And obviously I love listening to music. Although I don't know if I said this in my last video, I had to stop listening to music for a little while because it was so hard to listen to, which is also so sad. But I'm listening to music again. Some of you may have seen my tweet a couple months ago, and I had, for the first time in like a really long time, felt that's also the thing about like being, it's not like recovering, because I wasn't recovering necessarily from anything. But when you get to the other side of something that was difficult, and I think that my last, 4 or 5 years were fairly difficult, it's not that you get to the other side and there's any form of like euphoria or you're just so happy, but there is a very like special like peace in almost struggling that much, because I think I've been given the opportunity to learn myself very early on and find my center. I think a little earlier than maybe someone who had not struggled so hard would have. I think most people come to it. You hear older people speak about how, like they stopped caring so much about what people thought when they got to like their 50s or their 60s. And I think that's amazing. And maybe they didn't get there until they were a bit older because it wasn't something that was so suffocating. But I think that I've always been like very sensitive. And so me not knowing myself was deeply painful. And I'm not there yet. but it's just a centeredness. It's like knowing that you're gonna be okay. So I started feeding myself with more like poetry, or trying to watch more films instead of like just zoning out to a TV show, which I do all the time. I love everything crappy. 90 Day Fiance, My Fat Fab, anything on TLC. I watch all of it, all the garbage. I love it. But I love garbage because it does just let your brain coast. Like, I don't give a shit about what's happening. I don't have to think hard about anything. And so I do love that. I love mindless garbage TV. But I wanted to incorporate easier ways to consume more art into my life. And so one thing that I found were poetry podcasts. And there's one that I'm listening to now called Poetry Unbound, and they post a couple times a week, I think, and it's always under 10 minutes. And the host, who I believe is a Irish priest, I don't know if that's the right, but he is like a clergyman in Ireland, and he has always loved poetry. I guess it's like an Irish thing. There's a lot of poetry is very important, I guess, to the culture in Ireland. So he started a podcast where, and I love the format of it. So he starts the podcast with a little bit of an idea about the tone of the poem, and then he reads it, and then talks about it, and then reads it once more at the end of the podcast, which I love because it takes reading things a couple times, especially poetry, in order to fully get it. And he said something really, really beautiful on one of the last ones I listened to. And he was essentially saying that poetry is not there to describe the like bombastic, euphoric. I mean, it might be, but most of the time, poetry takes these like tiny, tiny little moments that, when looked at closer, are actually so influential and allows them to have this space. It allows the writer and the reader to have the space to delve into something that is maybe more subtle, but just as important. And I just really loved how he expressed that. But the first one I listened to, and I think it's so important to actually the topic of my last video. So the first episode, and I posted this on my Instagram, has a poem, and I want to read it for you because I think it can be really useful, and it's kind of about finding meaning in regular life and beauty and just everything, I guess. And I wanted to read it to you guys and recommend the podcast. Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, how to find meaning in pumping gas, how peeling... This is why I can't read poetry in front of people. I'm such a crybaby. That's the one thing that you're gonna notice. Okay, we'll start over. This is pathetic. We're not even at like an emotional part. I just like really love what they're saying. Jesus Christ. My emotional support water bottle. This poem is called What You Missed That Day You Were Absent from 4th Grade by Brad Aaron Maudlin. Okay. Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, how to find meaning in pumping gas, and how peeling potatoes can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how not to feel lost in the dark. After lunch, she distributed worksheets that covered the ways to remember your grandfather's voice. Then the class discussed falling asleep without feeling you'd forgotten to do something else, something important, and how to believe the house you wake in is your home. This prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the Psalms during cigarette breaks, how not to squirm for sound when your own thoughts are all you hear, and also that you have enough. The English lesson was that I am is a complete sentence. And just before the afternoon bell, she made Please stop yourself from crying. All right. And just before the afternoon bell, she made the math equation look easy. The one that proves that hundreds of questions and feeling cold and all those nights spent looking for whatever it was you lost and one person add up to something. I made it through. Okay. So a lot of how I have felt better in the last year is finding beauty in like things like this. And I love the way he also kind of, these are things that you can't learn in school. That's kind of what I was talking about. Like, these are things I had to learn over the last year because no one can teach you. And so that's why this poem is really special to me. I will put the transcript in the, or I'll put a link to the poem underneath. And if you guys want to read it, and if you have any thoughts on it, I'd love to hear them too. Okay, that's all I wanted to share today.